our next activity of leg lifts, there's a class 1 lever present. The effort is at the abdominals, the fulcrum is at the hip joint, and the load is the weight of the legs.
There are no class 2 levers in the front of the trunk because the only possible fulcrums are the hips and the spine. And the only possible effort could come from the abdominal muscles or the obliques. It is impossible to get a load in between the effort and the fulcrum, which is what would make it a class 2 lever.
A common class 2 lever in the body is calf raises. In calf raises, the fulcrum is at the floor, the effort is at the calf, and the load is the weight of the upper body.
This is a class 3 lever. It is the most common lever systems in the front of your trunk. It is a class 3 because the effort is between your load and fulcrum. The effort is in your abs, the fulcrum is in your hips, and the load is in your upper body.
There are 4 different types of muscles in the front of the trunk. The agonist is the abdominal muscles, the antagonist is the back muscles, the synergist is the internal and external obliques, and the fixators are the hips and glute muscles.
In sit-ups, the agonist pulls towards the hips anteriorly and the antagonist pulls towards the hips posteriorly. The fixator pulls posteriorly and the synergist pulls anteriorly and medially towards the hips.
In bending, the agonist moves towards the hips anteriorly. The antagonist pulls towards the hips posteriorly. The synergists are pulling both medially and anteriorly towards the hips, and the stabilizers are pulling inferiorly.
In leg lifts, the agonist pulls anteriorly towards the shoulders, the antagonist pulls posteriorly towards the shoulders, the synergist pulls anteriorly and medially towards the shoulders, and the fixators pull posteriorly.
With our first activity of picking up a ball, Haley's center of gravity is at S1 and S2. Her base of support is at her feet. The wider her feet get, the bigger her base of support is. And likewise, the smaller her feet get, the closer her feet get, the smaller her base of support is.
At standing, Haley's line of gravity is over her base of support. As she bends over, her line of gravity shifts forward, making her slightly unstable. And as she picks the ball up, her line of gravity returns back to over her base of support. For Haley's line of gravity to stay over her base of support, she would need to flex her knees instead of flexing her trunk to remain over her base of support.
Our next activity is crunches. So as you can see here, Sam is laying on the ground and his base of support is everything that's touching the ground. His center of gravity is going to remain at S1, S2. So when Sam activates his abs to do a crunch, he's making his base of support smaller, but he is bringing his line of gravity and weight over the remaining base of support. Doing a modified crunch with your legs at 90 degrees, feet off the ground, you're decreasing your base of support, but as you crunch, your line of gravity, even though the base of support is smaller still, remains over your base of support.
Newton's first law of motion states that objects at rest stay at rest unless acted upon by an outside force. It also states that objects in motion stay in motion unless acted by an outside force.
So while Sam's body is at rest here on the floor, gravity is acting on his upper body to keep it against the floor. It is not until Sam's abs are activated and overcome the outside force of gravity that he can move his upper body towards his legs.
Newton's second law states that force equals mass times acceleration.
This can be demonstrated by rotation of the trunk. When Haley rotates with the volleyball, the force is created smaller if he were to rotate with the backpack. This is because the mass of the backpack is larger than the mass of the volleyball.
In leg lifts, you can change the force created by changing the acceleration. When Sam lifts his legs slowly, the acceleration is small, so the force is small. When Sam lifts his legs faster, the acceleration is large, so the force is large. This is because the mass is constant.
When Haley applies an outside force to Sam's legs, His abs create an equal and opposite force to keep his legs in the starting position. Newton's third law states that every action has an equal and opposite reaction.
So while doing sit-ups, the action is bringing your head up, and the reaction is her feet coming up.
Is related to force arm and resistance arm, also known as moment arm.
The force arm in the rotation of the trunk is going to be from the effort to the fulcrum. So the effort here is the abdominal muscles, and the fulcrum is the spine. The resistance arm or moment arm is from the resistance, the ball, to the fulcrum, the spine. When Haley rotates, you can see she has a very long moment arm, which creates a lot of torque. If Haley were to hold the ball closer to her body, she would have a shorter moment arm, which creates less torque. In rotation of the trunk, torque is applied. So when Haley throws the ball with a short arm, short moment arm, she's not generating as much torque as she can. When Haley throws the ball with a longer arm, she's generating more torque and more force.
In leg lifts, the force arm is from the effort to the fulcrum, which is the abdominals to the hips, and the moment arm is from the legs to the fulcrum. So if Sam were to do leg lifts with his legs extended, the moment arm is long, which makes the torque large. If he were to do leg lifts with his knees bent, the moment arm is shorter, making the torque smaller. Lever classes can be changed in the front of the trunk. In a sit-up, there's a third class lever present. The effort is at the abs, the fulcrum is at the hips, and the load is the upper body. If the load is moved to the legs, it becomes a first class lever, where the fulcrum and the effort stay the same, but the load is on the opposite side of the body.